unboxing and review of George's beer making kit.
Pilsner. They actually make 3 of these. They make a Pilsner, an IPA, and a lager. We chose Pilsner because it's the most approachable all around. But North Mountain Supply sent us this.
Yes, and something about the styles we'll talk about later in this video, so make sure you watch the very end.
So when they were over in Italy, they were talking with these guys, and well, we got a kit to try out.
And we're actually super excited about this because this is something that we've been talking about with our European viewers. Many places in Europe actually include
hops.
Their hops right into their pre-made dry malt and liquid malt extracts.
Box is now empty.
So first off, we see that they include the fermenter, and it is one of those cool ones that have the measurements right on it.
Has a spot for a spigot too.
Yeah.
Not my favorite thing, but I'm okay with it. That doesn't bother me.
So the top has an area for a grommet for your airlock. Let's see if it's included.
One important thing is it is in metric, so it's all in liters. This is a 5-liter kit, just so you're aware. Instructions. Yes, there is an airlock included, and it's actually the tiny little one.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Is there a grommet?
Oh.
Yes, there is.
Okay. And there's also the spigot. The spigot looks pretty stocky and sturdy. Let's just open it up and take a look. So now we have everything out of the bucket. Let's take a look at everything that's included.
So here is the spigot. We can see that it has a gasket, so it'll fit nice and snug. Here is our airlock. It's the condensed 2-piece airlock. These are really great of space saving. Just make sure that you keep an eye on it so it doesn't dry out on you. This is the grommet. It looks like a good quality rubber grommet, so I'm pretty excited about seeing how that works out. This is a temperature gauge. I'm going to read the instructions, but it looks like it's going to tape right on our fermenter. These little guys are actually measuring devices, so that's interesting. And then, of course, it comes with caps, and then this. This is a hammer capper.
Yeah.
This scares us.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Also in there was, as said before, the instructions and the bag o' malt.
And I was also, like, where's the yeast? It's right there.
They glued the yeast packet to the bottom of the bag o' malt.
It's like the gummy stuff, so it's fine.
It's on there pretty good though. I just don't want to like break any seal. Oh, there's no seal. Okay, so you can't hurt it. I was afraid of it. This is the kind of glue that I like to play with though.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not going to. It does not say anything but lager yeast on here, which to me seems a little strange that it includes a lager yeast with this, but we'll have to see how that works out.
It has printed on your malt and hops combo the production date and the best by date. So it tells you both variables. Lots of times, many of these things will just have best by, but they won't tell you when they were actually produced. So this was produced
June 6th of 2024. Today is September 25th of 2024, so it's pretty recent.
Yeah.
And Best Buy is 6th of 2026. So it's got 2 years shelf life. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
Probably because of the way they seal the bag and everything. Now, the cool part about this is basically you just heat this up.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's an 8-part instruction list.
Yeah. It's super simple. The instructions are there. There's more detailed instructions here, but we're going to kind of do a little bit of both.
They have everything. They tell you the ingredients. The ingredients in this is liquid malt extract, barley, inverted sugar syrup, dried yeast, emulsifier, and hop extract.
Dried yeast is already in there.
Yeah, it's like a nutrient, I think.
Oh, a nutrient yeast, like yeast hulls.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's my understanding. I may be wrong. They do give you storage instructions, so if you want to keep this for a while, they say keep it in a cool, dry place, away from direct sunlight. We left ours in our box in our bucket, so we knew it was in a cool, dry place, out of direct sunlight.
Now, the temperature gauge, I read the instructions earlier. You're supposed to put this right onto the bucket so that you know what temperature things are. So I'm just going to peel this off and stick it to it. Hopefully I do it kind of straight. Now, again, it's all in Celsius, but it's really, really easy to do the conversions. Just do it on your phone. If you have one of those devices that shall not be named, the Amazon thing, you can always ask that, or the Google thing, and you can always ask those, and they will tell you quite readily, and probably more information than you really wanted,
Yes.
but they'll tell you. And I just literally stuck that right to the side.
Another thing that I find interesting that they include in their labeling is actually a breakdown of the nutrients of the final beer, and that's pretty cool. Like
like nutrition label.
fat, energy, carbohydrates.
That's amazing.
Protein.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. So go George's beer.
So what's the calories?
The calories, I
think
because
it's per
they have
per
it
pint.
in all the different denominations. So I'm thinking, is it 311 or is it
It's 300.
K?
I think kilojoule. I think the 1300 is for the entire batch.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. Let me look at it. No, it's not. It's 300 calories for a serving, and there's supposed to be like 10 servings.
The final ABV should be roughly around 4.1. They do the plus and minus sign, so you know this is a natural process, so they can't say exactly what the final ABV is going to be. But it's nice that they include all the information right there on the label, easy for you to read and find.
I did the grommet.
The grommet, Brian did it without me even really paying attention, so you can see
Pretty
how
simple.
difficult it was to install that.
Probably best to sanitize everything before we install this.
Yeah.
Because you'd want to take all this apart. But that fits in beautifully well.
Does the spigot sit
I don't know.
lower than the table?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So this is a dripless racking, basically.
Yeah. So
You can rack this right into
it's going to sit below your
Let's
bucket.
check the instructions here, though, to see how I'm supposed to install that.
We have this really bad tendency of just going, oh, I know how to do this, and just doing it, and then go, oops. Oops.
This is a no sediment system. See how that has a little half moon?
Ah,
So that lets the tube all sit
yeah, that's
below
clever.
that. So when you use this, you're actually not
Right.
getting tube right
So
in
when
there.
you are installing that, you want to make sure this part is sitting towards the bottom and that it's not like that way, because that way it won't work, right?
The gasket goes on the external wall.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't we do this? How about we sanitize everything and I'll get some hot water going.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to go by the instructions. What's the first instruction down here?
The first instruction is actually before that instruction, but we'll go ahead with what Brian's doing. Remove the packet yeast from the underside of the bag and set aside. Preheat distill sealed malt package for 10 minutes in hot water to thin the contents.
And then,
Do we want to put a timer for 10 minutes?
and then,
We're going to go backwards in time, because before you start, make sure to wash all necessary equipment thoroughly. Cleanliness is very important for the fermentation process. We have stressed this in all of our videos, but what we did is that we put this into our Star San solution, diluted by the manufacturer's instructions. But I want to point out that all of these items are plastic, so you do not want to soak them, because the additional chemicals of the Star San could perhaps leach into the plastic and therefore into your beer, adjusting the flavor.
right, now they said wash. I'm going to change that word wash to sanitize. I highly encourage sanitization, especially for beer. It's so easily infected, so be really careful with that. The other thing is, when we were putting the spigot on, I want to show you something.
We had concerns because it sits below the bottom of the bucket. And we're
More
like,
than that. Let me show you the inside. So there you can see that half moon shape there. That is their anti-sediment protection. And when we go around to the outside, you see the spigot. The trick is getting them lined up so that half moon is at the top, like that. So that way all the sediment stays down here and the liquid can flow out the top.
So we were combating between getting that back bracket positioned correctly for the no sediment system, but still having our spigot in and up and down.
Took a little spinning around,
Right.
but we managed to do it. It wasn't that hard, but it is something you want to be aware of.
But during that process, Brian found out something very interesting.
And here's another thing. I don't like spigots because see how that's sitting off? I can't just set this on a table. You got to set it like this. Our fermentation doesn't have any way to put this in there. And then I just went like this and I realized it turns. It just spins inside there. So this will sit totally flat. Totally cool.
Now, Brian asked me, oh, you got to make sure that it's closed. Well, I did make sure that it was closed. But beyond that, the tab actually says closed on the closed side and open on the open side. So that way, you know just by a glance
See, now that,
whether you're open or closed.
little touches like that make a huge difference on things like this because most of these do not say that and most do not spin like that. Now, I did say earlier, I might not have even said it on camera, that you can literally just put a bottle up to here and rack that way. I would still put tubing on there. It's just the way I would do it. I'm not a big fan of spigots though, but that's me personally. You could still rack out of here if you wanted to. You can just not use the spigot, but it is there.
But with the combination of the no sediment system, that is a convenience, and we will utilize that and put it to the test.
Yeah, we are going to try to follow
to bottling time.
Yeah, we're going to try to follow as much as we can. They have a few things in here that I would not recommend, but we're going to do them. So you don't have to.
Another thing that they put out, they wanted to bring your attention to before starting, is that these items are not dishwasher safe. And that goes back to my previous statement about the chemical contamination. Most dishwashing detergents and the heat of your dishwasher may infuse those chemicals into the plastic, and that's why they do not recommend you use that process for cleaning these items.
Can we do one quick check?
Sure.
I would like you to put some... dunk this into turbos and fill it a bit like up to here. I want to see if this leaks.
Do you want to just pour some water in it?
No, because that's the water that we're actually using in the beer. I just want to see if it holds water. So something I wanted Derica to do, because we just installed this spigot, and this is probably a good idea. I wanted her to fill this with water. So this is full up to about here. I wanted to see if that leaks, and it doesn't seem to. Seems pretty perfect.
And I'm impressed because Brian's recommendation for me to do that was just to dunk it into turbo. So I got the whole thing wet. Mm-hmm. So that should exaggerate drippage just because it's wet from the outside.
But there's nothing. Yeah. Whoop. But that's, I think it's from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not leaking. Okay. It's good. It's good. Now you can dump that back out. So now all that's left is for us to wait the 10 minutes for this. I'm going to go heat up a little bit more water because it does ask for some more, and we'll be back in a sec. Okay, 10 minutes is up. So I'm going to take this out of here. That was hot water.
Yes, so don't burn yourself.
It doesn't specify the temperature for that water, does it? Just says hot water.
Hot.
It also doesn't look like there's perforations or tear marks, so I am just going to cut it. Scissors. Need to be sanitized. Okay. You can tell by the drippage. They are now sanitized. And I'm just going to cut like a pretty good notch. They don't specify exactly how to cut it or anything, so I'm doing the best I can to guess here, people, you know? All right.
Smells like beer.
It totally smells like beer.
We're going to pour that malt into the fermenter.
Oh, wow. It pours really easy. It's like super liquidy at this point.
And that's why they wanted you to thin it, so that way it was an easy pour.
Now, I'm seeing a lot of sugar still in this bag.
I think you could totally pour the hot water in the bag.
Yeah.
I would just do it over the fermenter, so that way you don't
The next instruction is to pour 500 mils of water.
Hot water, approximately 60 to 7 degrees Celsius.
We'll put the Fahrenheit across the middle. This is very dangerous what I'm doing right now because this water's hot. I'll burn myself.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of that.
If you have heat-resistant gloves, it might be a good idea to wear those.
But trying to get more, I mean, look at the color of this coming out. There's still a lot of sugars in there. And if you don't rinse that out, you're not getting all the sugars. So there's still more. There's still more. So I'm just going to use more of this. Oh, I can just stand it up. Here, you know what? Let me get this pot out of the way. I realize we're making this sound very complicated and all these. It's really simple.
It's really simple.
We're just trying to show you all the little things that can happen while you're trying to do it. Like pouring into this bag. Had I realized I was going to have to do this or thought ahead, I might have made a larger hole. But I still am getting that 500 ml of hot water into the mix, just in a slightly different manner.
Gentle little swirl.
I'm gonna,
Don't hurt yourself.
Well, I don't think that water's all that hot anymore. It might have cooled down a little bit more. Oh no, it's still hot. Yeah, it's still hot. All right. So I'm reasonably, oh yeah, I did good. reasonably sure I got all the sugars out of that. Oh, yeah. What do you think?
Oh, clean. Good job.
I did good. Okay.
All right, so the next step is to completely the filling with cold water until it reaches 5 liters.
Doesn't it say to mix thoroughly first?
Nope. It says mix after you add the cold water. You can mix now if you want.
I'm going to mix it now.
He's going to mix it, and then he's going to mix it again.
Yes.
Because he's Brian.
You can never mix too much, but you can mix not enough. And I'm just afraid after adding the other water that it might not mix as well. So I'd rather get it now while it's hot. We're straying from the instructions. I'm sorry.
Sure. So this is the first non-included, other than the vessels we use to carry the water, thing that we've added, and that's the spattle.
Yep.
What is the spattle, Brian?
Spattle. It's a spoon. It's a paddle that's hot and has must all over it now. It's both, and you can get yours in the description below. And yes, I named it. That is the real name for it.
So another thing you want to take into consideration when stirring is that this is a plastic fermenter and it can scrape if you use metal in particular. So you just want to be gentle and not...
Yeah, even with the plastic, I'm being gentle. Well, I don't know, that's pretty sturdy plastic. Yeah. Okay, so let's pour some more water in.
All right, so you're going to turn your bucket towards you,
so I can see the numbers,
Brian, because you want to see that 5 liter mark, because that's where we're going to fill with this water.
Yep, and this is just cool water. It says cold. This is cool. The idea is to bring the temperature down.
We're in Florida. We don't get cold,
cold
water unless we refrigerate it.
So 5 liters, right?
Yeah.
5. Which, another good point is, this makes a really nice 5 liter fermenter.
Yeah, it does.
5 liters is about 1.3 gallons, by the way. American gallons. Wow, look at that. I estimated how much water we would need. Okay, now I'm going to mix that again.
Some more.
It definitely looks already like a very light colored beer, which I would expect. Now, they don't include a hydrometer or anything like that. For a beer like this, it's probably not even really necessary.
Right.
But for the sake of thoroughness, I'd like to actually take a reading on this because they said it should come out to about 4.5%.
4.1.
So I want to see if we have the potential to do that based off of the exact instructions and measurements. That's fair, right?
Sure. Do you want to wait for it to cool down?
Right now, it is sitting at... It's looking like 30 degrees Celsius. I'll put the Fahrenheit here. I need to ask what that is. So right now, it is at 86 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? They say to get it lower than that to start because there's a line in there that says that the yeast can be harmed anything above that. I'm going to disagree. Yeast die at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. They start to die off around 110 to 115.
This is a kit, and they are trying to hedge their bets so that way you have the highest potential of success. So they're erring on the side of caution.
That's exactly what
they recommend that you get your temperature down to 22 degrees Celsius before adding the yeast.
Okay. So we can sit here for about half an hour and wait for that to cool down.
And then they have a little caution note to add emphasis to that, saying that above 26 to 28 degrees Celsius, the yeast can degrade and cause fermentation to stop. While at temperatures below 16 degrees Celsius, the fermentation process can take way too long to start. So they're giving you a temperature range, which I really appreciate because lots of the kits that we've used in the past don't really give that extra information. And that's really helpful because we have viewers all over the world. You might be where it's really cold and not understand why it's taking so long for your stuff to brew.
But I'd like to point something out. They err on the side of caution, but they cautioned a little too far. 30 degrees Celsius, which is higher than what they say can hurt the yeast, is only 86 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep, but I'm following a kit, and I don't want to be too much of a...
Okay, we'll be back when this cools down. So me being the kind of person that I am, I never take anything at face value like this thermometer thing here. Let me just show you what this is doing right now so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. So as you can see, it's saying it's either 30 or 32 degrees Celsius. It's looking like 31 or so is what they're calling that, which comes to 86 to like 88 degrees or so Fahrenheit. So I got out my handy dandy thermometer that I actually know is pretty accurate and just stick that down in the center or even over to the side where that is. And I get 94.8. So they are erring on the side of caution, probably because the margin of error of their thermometer is pretty big. Off camera, I told Derica that even though the instructions say what they say, we have pitched yeast at 105 and 108 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit before and never, ever, even once had a problem. In fact, it kicks off faster. Beyond 110, no. And I like to be under 100 Fahrenheit. Okay, I'll put the Celsius here for that one. So we are under 100 degrees. I can rationalize this all day long. I know they say to make it go cooler, but I feel there is zero reason to wait.
Translation, Brian's an impatient and he just wants to start it now.
And there's no reason to wait other than to say we follow the instructions. Will this change the outcome of the beer? I don't think so.
All right, so we are going to add the yeast contained in the sachet and mix for about 30 seconds.
Looks like pretty standard yeast. Looks to be about a teaspoon. Yeah, it's about a teaspoon, so pretty typical. And I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top. And
back your packet.
Especially this one. There was a lot of dust in there. How'd I do?
You did good.
Okay. And they say to mix that, huh?
Yeah.
I don't like to mix yeast like this. I'm not mixing it.
It sticks to everything.
You lose a good percentage of it sticking to the spatula. I don't want to do that. It's wet. I sprinkled it in.
Yeah.
It has a large surface area. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now, I know I said that we were going to follow the instructions carefully, but here's the thing.
It's Brian, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't follow any instructions.
But we've been doing this for a long time. And, you know, if you've done this before, you know that you don't have to mix the yeast in. It's fine. It's fine.
All right.
It's fine.
So we are going to close the fermenter tightly.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that our airlock is prepared.
They say to put water in it.
They say to put water. We don't do water, we do star sand because we know we're in Florida and we got bugs.
Yeah. I suggest not using water. I suggest using either star sand fluid like we're going to, or a cheap alcohol like Scoresby Scotch or something like that. And I probably...
The lid was too tight. Well, this is the complication.
It's a tight lid.
And maybe this is why they say pour water in it, is that maybe it's easier.
Because if you fill it afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We can do that. Here. Dump it out.
Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah. Okay, now.
I want to just get the water
Gotta
out.
dry it all off. This thing's just popping right back up. Okay, now the baster with some star sand.
Right.
And you can just put your finger over the end. Fill it up. Not the middle.
I
I put my finger over the middle so that nothing gets inside. And then just pop the cap back on. Good to go. Just like that.
Ta-da! All right, so let's check our instructions.
Well, the next is let it ferment.
After a few hours, up to 48 hours, bubbling will begin to confirm that fermentation is active.
I say up to 72. It can sometimes take up to 3 days. In this, it probably won't.
The process will be completed after approximately 5 to 8 days at a constant temperature between 18 degrees Celsius and 24 degrees Celsius.
We never took a reading.
When you notice that the bubbling has finished, the beer is ready to be bottled. And that's where we're going to stop on our instructions for today, because that is as far as we've gotten in this process.
But we never took a reading.
We never took a reading.
So I guess we're not gonna.
Well, we can.
I gotta open this back up to do that. We're not opening it back up.
Okay.
I also want to talk about something. This right here. This should be later in the video, but I want to talk about it now because I think by the time we get to that point, we'll have the other things.
So the recommended procedure for that was to take a towel, fold it a bunch of times, place your filled glass bottle,
Put a bottle cap
on it, put that on there, and then
hit it with a
a
hammer. That just sounds like a horrifically bad idea. So North Mountain Supply, while we were filming this, like literally while we were waiting for the thing to heat up, sent me a text because we had talked about this already and they said, that's a bad idea. So they are actually going to be replacing this with their hand bottle capper. And I'm hoping, and I'm going to talk to them, that we'll have that for the actual bottling of this exact brew when we get to that point in a couple of weeks. But for now, this is going to go sit and it's going to ferment and we'll be back to show you what it does next. Okay, I couldn't let it go. I have to have a reading on this just to tell you guys. So we're going to take the cap off and take the lid off. How do you get the lid off?
I'm just going to put this over here so I can help.
Oh, got to get fingernails under there and there we go. All right. There we go. Because it just bothers me to not have a reading. I like to be able to tell people what's going on, and you should know. You know, the people have a right to know. And it was just really bothering me because, you know, we're doing a review on this. I'm like, why didn't we take a reading? Let me bring it over to my area here. Step into my office. 1.032. Okay, so we're going to cover this back up. So 1.032. Okay, that does say 4.1%, but I'd like to point something out. This gets carbonated, and it's naturally carbonated. So it's actually going to be a little bit more. It's going to be closer to like 4.6 or 4.7%, just so you know.
That's if it goes completely dry.
Right, and they don't usually, so they're probably pretty close. Actually, I forgot about that there's non-fermentable sugars usually, so, okay, forget everything that I just said. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm leaving it because it's still good to know.
We're going to go ahead and refill our airlock and put it back together, and we'll see you in a week or so.
2 or so. All right, so we are 1 week into this, and Derica has some thoughts.
I'm not sure if they're thoughts or more observations. So to start off, we have the volume of this vessel. It is really neat and tiny and cute and convenient, but
5 liters goes right to where my finger is.
So as you can see, the edge between the top of Brian's finger and the top of this container is very minimal. So
it's like 1 inch.
The good news is minimum head space. The bad news is minimum head space. Beers tend to, in general, be kind of messy at the initial fermentation and create a lot of foam, a lot of bubbles, a lot of stuff going on. And so my observations were the first thing that it did is it actually bowed the lid up.
Yeah, it's still a little bit.
Part of that is a good thing because that means our seal is perfect on this, which sometimes is problematic with buckets. This one is A-okay. But the bad news was that as it pushed up to that and we have this smaller sized airlock, foam and gunk and sediment clogged this up like daily.
I think you're on 4 or 5 changes.
Yeah. So I had to pull it out and wash it out real quick and stick it back in there. And then because it was bowed from the pressure, when I put it back in, it made a mess. And it
was a little more difficult than it should have been.
Is that really a problem? No, not really. It was just kind of annoying.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to like having a 5-liter bucket. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
I like that, especially one that has measurements on the side. That's nice. One thing I would like to point out is, notice this is just sitting flat on the table. That spout turned up, not a drop.
Not a drop. No leakage. No problems whatsoever.
So that worked beautifully.
That design is perfect.
Let me show you this airlock.
So I purposely didn't wash it out today, so that way you could see some of the particulate that's accumulated in there from the foam. So that gives you some of the idea of what I've been dealing with on a daily basis. But it's still filled enough to do its job, and it's still bubbling, so everything is A-okay. Like I said, it's just kind of annoying. So what would I suggest to remedy this? Well, the first thing I would suggest is to have a slightly larger airlock. They do make airlocks that are bigger. This tall but wider, and that may help have more liquid, but it's still going to get gunky. It's just going to have...
But it'll be less sensitive when you try putting it back into the lid, too, because there's more liquid there. So, see, just the slightest little touch, and this thing really bubbles like crazy. And you can see how that is moving a lot because this lid is very thin plastic, okay? And this is not a problem, but it's just the observation. If the airlock were larger, that little push wouldn't move as much liquid, so it wouldn't be as much of an issue. So suck back and things like that wouldn't be a problem.
The second recommendation I would have is if there was any way possible for there to be just a little bit more space between that
or
mark.
Make a little bit less beer. My recommendation would actually be not fill it to 5 liters, but fill it to like 4 or 4.5. Yeah, you'll make more like a 6 or 7% beer based on their recommendation. You'll have a little bit less, but you won't experience the problems we ran into.
Now, are these truly significant problems? Absolutely
not. Really.
Not. This is just nitpicking.
Not even a deal breaker for me. Because here's the thing. Once you become a brewer after a little while, you'd notice that airlock and you just change it out for a different thing. I mean, you would just use a different airlock. So it's not a big deal. And like I say, I really like having a 5-liter bucket. That's just kind of cool. It's an unusual size.
This spigot design is...
Well, we'll see when we get to the racking. I am not a fan of racking using a spigot, but that's just me. That's a personal choice.
All of our concerns that we had for that, they took care of. And so I'm impressed with that.
So far...
And the seal is fantastic.
Yeah. So far, this is like a B+, in my opinion. Now, if the beer comes out tasting amazing, that could change that too.
For
You know,
real,
if
yeah.
it's a really, really good beer, a little bit of trouble is worth it. You know, that kind of thing.
Now, typically we would start our first reading today, but we noticed that there's still off-gassing,
Yeah.
or perhaps because it's so active
I mean,
and
it's a
refilling.
low gravity, but it is still bubbling a little. So we'll give it another week. Doesn't hurt. Okay. There's no rush to get to the next stage. The instructions say a certain number of days. Don't believe the instructions in that respect. I'm sorry, but don't.
It's a guideline.
Yeast will do what yeast will do. Okay. Better to let them sit a day or two longer than to pull them a day or two early.
That said, you don't want to wait too long,
Right.
because we're going to be naturally carbonating this, and so we need to still have viable yeast.
Exactly. So see you in like another week. Okay. It's been a while. It's been close to 4 weeks on this. And here's why. We had a hurricane come through. So we weren't even in town for a whole week, which means not only did this sit, but the temperature of this probably rose up into the 80-degree mark. But I believe fermentation was done by the time we left, so it should not be a factor.
Right. The kit tells you to wait 5 to 8 days and then transfer to bottles.
Right.
We're well past that, but that wasn't necessarily our fault.
No, was not the plan. But we did start at a 1.032. We want to check that now. And I know there's a trick to doing this. What is the trick?
There are little flaps, or just one on this, that if you pull back, you can get in there with your fingers.
Should I be... I'm going to get the other camera and show you.
So this little piece here, if you just pop off the top parts, it allows you to get underneath that lip. It seals really well without getting it underneath that lip. You're probably not going to get it off.
And once you open it, you want to do an olfactory and an optical inspection. It smells like beer.
Now you will see
Muck.
some muck.
Goop.
That's beer muck. That's part of the process.
That's from when it foamed up and it just sticks to everything.
Yeah, it's just proteins.
Let me just show you what it looks like inside. As you can see, it even cleared quite a bit. Like it's looking really, really good. But we do have to do one extra step when we bottle it to ensure carbonation actually works. And notice I used the word ensure. So first thing we want to do right now, though, is get this out of the way.
Can you put it in the sink
From here? Maybe. But
without getting gunk everywhere?
there's muck on it. I don't want to do that. I really do like this bucket design. I think it works very, very well. What we want to do now, though, is take a reading on this. Make sure it's done. Because if it's not, we have a problem.
If it's not done by now, it's just not gonna.
Wow, look at that.
That's super clear.
I haven't made a light beer like this in years. Normally, they're so dark you can't see through them.
Yeah.
Beers normally have a little bit of non-fermentable sugars in them, so they don't usually go completely dry. And this one is no exception, except that it didn't go as not dry as expected. That's unusual. 1.004. Okay. Now we want to put that into a pitcher. The reason I'm not just pouring it right back in is because then it'll get all the trub all mixed up and make it nasty. And we want to put this in bottles today and not have trub in the bottles. We want to be trubless.
All right, so I have questions for you.
What?
Do we want to put a hose on the spigot?
We can try. I think that might be neat to do.
Okay, we're going to try something.
But also, we're going to use the calculator teacher said I would never have handy. And we're going to figure out how much alcohol we're going to have in this. So 1.032 minus 1.004 gives us 28 points of gravity used up. For these, because it's a lower ABV, we use 131.25, which you might have heard that before. Lower numbers, it works a little bit more accurately. Gives us 3.675. But we're also adding some sugar for natural carbonation. Usually adds about 0.4% ABV, so plus 0.4. This is going to come out to 4%, right around 4% ABV. So it's a nice light beer. You know, have it after you mow the lawn, have a couple 2-tree, you know. Anyway, so.
All right, let me clear this out here, and we need a hose.
We do. All right, so the next step is to rack. Now, for this, we do have this lovely spigot on the side of this.
Our hose doesn't fit.
Right. So there's a couple ways to handle this. I can either just use an auto siphon, which would be the way we would normally do it, or I can very carefully pour from the spigot into this, run it down the side. It'll oxidize the least amount possible, and it's probably fine. Now, because this is such a low alcohol beer, that does worry me very slightly.
We have an auto siphon right here. Do you want to just use an auto
I think
siphon?
we're just going to use the auto siphon. It'll probably be the safest way to go.
So our destination is going to be our pitcher, and I'm going to set that lower than our source, which is our fermentation bucket.
Exactly. Now, with everything that we just talked about, if you do have access to a little bit bigger tubing, totally use the spigot. It'll probably be a lot easier. But I'm used to using an auto siphon, so it doesn't really bother me. I did leave the cap on because I know there's some trub in the bottom of this, and I don't really want that getting in there.
And we'll be back once we have this siphoned out. Okay, so if we were going by the book, see, I got a book. We would have been doing things differently, but the book does not take into consideration Uncle Milty, aka Hurricane Milton.
Yeah.
So if we were on the book's time frame, this would have been a much easier process because all we would have had to do was remove the airlock from the lid, and that would create the balance of pressure.
Right.
And then we could just use the tap and go straight to bottle.
Right.
That distance between the bottle and the tap shouldn't have a significant amount of aeration, particularly if you are careful and tilt the bottle so that it runs down the side rather than splashes, and you would be good to go. But that was not our case. So we've racked it to our pitcher because there's some other steps that we're going to want to do that I don't think they include in these directions.
Oh, they do, just not the way we like to do them. That's why we did it differently.
Going to tell you what the directions say and then tell you why we're doing it differently. So after those 5 to 8 days of the constant temperature, we didn't have 5 to 8 days and we didn't have a constant temperature. Basically, you should notice the bubbling has stopped, and that's when you know that the beer is ready. Because
pretty sure this was ready before.
Right, because they don't take into consideration
gravity
readings
at all.
It's more of an observatory process.
I recommend using gravity readings. Much more precise way to go.
So they make a big deal for you to make sure that your bottles are washed. Our bottles are being sanitized in a Star San diluted solution as per the manufacturer's requirements.
Yep.
Then they say go ahead and remove the bubbler, the airlock, from the lid, and then you can use the tap to fill your bottles. You want to leave approximately 2 to 3 centimeters of void between the liquid and the mouth. So that space before capping, because if it's too close to the rim, bad things can happen. They have you pour sugar into each bottle.
And that's why we're not doing it the way they say.
That's why they have all those different little measuring devices based on what the volume of your bottle is. Right. We are going to be adding sugar to our pitcher, mixing it thoroughly, and then adding that to the bottle.
Let me explain why we're not going to do it that way. The way they're saying to do it, if you measure that precisely with their little spoon, it's probably still okay, but our way ensures that the sugar is evenly distributed through the entire batch. That way you can make a 6-ounce bottle, 10-ounce bottle, 20-ounce bottle, doesn't matter, all the same concentration of sugar throughout all of them. It also guarantees every bottle is the same, exactly the same.
They do have a bold section here in the middle telling you how to decide which of their measuring cups to use for which volume of bottle.
But it doesn't say how big they are. It doesn't say what they hold, like how much you're putting in each bottle.
Sure. But they do focus that it's important that you add the right amount of sugar, otherwise you won't be getting the right amount of carbonation.
Right. More sugar will make a higher carbonation, less sugar will make a lower carbonation. In our case, we're going to be using the answer to the universe, 42 grams, also known as 1.5 ounces. This is just regular white sugar.
Now, that's what we typically use for 1 gallon of beer. Now, we are
slightly over a gallon.
That much. Over a gallon.
Not enough to worry about.
But it should be fine. Now, they are suggesting that once you have added this to your bottles, You want to keep the bottles upright for 10 to 14 days at a temperature between 18 degrees and 24 degrees Celsius. Fahrenheit will be right here. And that way you will know that it is carbonated correctly.
Could take a couple of weeks.
They also take mention that there are going to be sediments, and that's a natural part of the natural carbonation process. It's going to be deposited at the bottom of your bottle, and you just want to do an easy pour, so that way you don't get that sediment in your glass.
Exactly.
And they have some interesting, fun things about why does the bubbler bubble, why water quality is important, and the crown caps that come with the kit. These are the crown caps. That's what we're going to be using. Because
going in Guinness bottles. We're using Guinness bottles.
We're repurposing Guinness bottles.
Because I drink Guinness.
And we do not... We're doing this as a review for North Mountain Supply because they are bringing this to the United States. This is not a United States product.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's going to be.
But North Mountain Supply is going to make it happen for you. And we're super excited because of the combination of the malt and the hops at the very beginning. This makes this a really easy kit to follow.
Yes, it makes it super easy to make. Like, this is no harder than making any meat or wine, but it does take away a little bit of control. However, if you're like us and you generally use the same amount of hops every time, just because we're kind of simple about beer that way, this is probably going to be right up your alley.
Yeah.
And it's a nice way to learn how to make it and feel the, experience of making it yourself. And then you can always branch out later on.
But because we're extra, we're going to be using our fancy tabletop capper because we love it so much.
But first we have to put this into bottles.
Yeah, you're going to want to cap right after bottling, yeah? Or you want to...
We're going to fill all the bottles.
All the
and
bottles
then we're going to cap.
and do the thing?
Yep.
We're going to do the thing. So stay tuned for what that thing actually is.
So I get to use an auto siphon now and fill all the bottles. To do that, we use a bottle, the bottle
bottling
filler.
wand.
Can you, is it in there?
Yeah.
Can you just hand me the bottling wand?
Okay, I'm going to take this moment to talk about the word just. Whenever you add the word just to a sentence, more than likely what you're asking the person isn't a simple thing. In this case, all of the bottles that I'm sanitizing are on top of the bottling wand, so
how about we get the bottles out and then we'll show you the bottling wand. Be back in a minute. Okay, so this is a bottling wand, and it has the springy thingy, also known as a stem valve, on the end. And you just stick it on the end of the tubing for your auto siphon, just a little. Just enough that it won't pop off, but not so much that you can't get it back off, because trust me. Now, if you want to have two auto siphons and one of them has a bottling wand, you can totally do that. And the way you do this is you just stick this into the bottle. We're just going to do a dry run demonstration here because we have to do this off camera. It's way too much. But anyway.
All right, so the important part is that when you put that in the bottle, you want to push it down because if you don't engage the springy thingy, as Brian said, then it's not going to allow flow, which will make priming your auto siphon nearly impossible.
Not nearly. It's impossible. You'll oxygenate the heck out of your beer.
Once you're flowing and you're all good, when you get to roughly here, and you want to go that far because there is going to be displacement because of the wand that's in there, you're going to take that out because now you're not pushing. The springy thingy has engaged, causing a clog so you won't drip all over the place, and go to your next bottle, depress, and continue.
Wash, rinse, and repeat. It can be about 12 bottles for this one. So we'll see in a few minutes. All right, so now we have our lovely wall of bottles.
We got 12 bottles.
Right. And you might think, oh, well, now all you have to do is cap them. Well, normally, yes.
But again, we had that Hurricane Milton problem. So our yeast might not be all that ready to eat up those carbonation sugars for carbonation.
Right.
So we're going to use
insurance yeast. And this is just Safe Ale SO4 yeast. It's a good beer yeast, ale yeast. And I'm just going to literally put in a couple of sprinkles into each bottle, which I'm not going to make you watch me do all of them.
And this is just for insurance, just to make sure that we have live yeast in there that will do the natural carbonation for us.
I mean, I can probably count the number of grains I'm adding, like 20, 30 grains each. That's it. Because that's enough to carbonate just what we need. If you leave it out, you're taking a risk. We've done that. The first time we didn't put it in, that's the one that didn't carbonate. So we do this now. And we're going to do that and then be back to show you bottle capping. in a second.
All right, don't adjust your screen. We have our bottler here rather than the one that comes with the kit because we just love this thing so gosh darn much.
The one that comes with the kit is literally a hammer.
Well,
I don't like that idea.
They're augmenting the kit for us based on our recommendation,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're going to do the
butterfly
cutter.
handle one.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, we've been giving feedback as we're making this video, and that was one of the things. I don't like the idea of putting a cap on here and hitting it with a hammer. That just seems like a bad idea. So we got North Mountain to use the butterfly one. Now, if you have one of these guys, even better. But this would be a little bit much to introduce into a kit.
Yeah.
So, okay. But the way this works, super, super simple. You put the cap in there, just like we did. Make sure your bottle lines up to the line right here. There's actually a little arrow. And you just, I think they say use 2 fingers or something even. Isn't it like 1 finger?
I don't know.
I hold the bottle, just because I'm paranoid like that. That should be doing it like that. Yeah, it's so satisfying. And then you just...
You just do
give it a little shaky shake and it comes off. Now, somebody told me that I should be doing 2 presses to make sure that it's crimped all around. Okay, I can go with that. No big deal.
We never had an issue, but okay.
No, we didn't have an issue, but better safe than sorry, you know?
And there you go, bottled beer.
Yeah, and we're just going to finish off the rest of these and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
All right, so we're all bottled up. We used the caps that came with the kit, and we were down to 1 cap. So these are 16 ounce.
They're the Guinness bottles. I think they're like 11.8 ounces or something strange. Call it 12.
So whatever size these are,
Yeah.
Brian will figure it out and put it
like
a note
12
here so
ounces,
you'll see. But if you use those size bottles, then you should have the right amount of caps that come with the kit. So,
Exactly.
Yay. Now, at this point, we're just waiting for them to natural carbonate. We're going to use the recommendation guidelines listed in the kit. So we're going to do 2 full weeks in our bomb shelter. Our bomb shelter is basically just a heavy-duty plastic tub that the bottles will fit upright in. You want to keep these upright, and that'll keep them in a cool, dark place that will stay the same temperature, which coordinates with the directions that are listed in the brochure.
As long as we don't get another hurricane, they'll be the same time.
Please don't say that. No more hurricanes. I'm so done.
It's technically still hurricane season.
So done.
Yeah, well, we might have a solution for that.
Anyway, we'll see you then.
So it's been 2 weeks that this has been carbonating. Now there's some confusion as to what carbonation is when you do it in the bottle like this. It's actually a small fermentation. It's just a very controlled fermentation. We added some sugar, let it ferment, it produces gas and a little bit of alcohol, and it pressurizes because we have a cap on it. Oh, speaking of caps, hold on a second. Need to get my MacGyver knife here. All right, let's see if we can catch a hiss off the bottle cap. Oh yeah, thank you. And the pour. Oh yeah, definitely carbonated. It's a pretty color. That is a lovely glass of beer.
That is a perfect glass of beer, I would say.
You want a little more? Well, I got it on the side. You're always going to get a little bit of sediment in the bottom of the bottle when you do natural carbonation.
Okay, that's fine.
Now, the point of this is we're doing a review of this kit, so we're not going to give scores or anything like that, but we will tell you if we like it or not. We have said this is not necessarily our style of beer, but that doesn't mean we can't judge it for what it is.
Visually,
Smells like beer.
it's very appealing. It looks just like
beautiful.
what you would expect a beer to look like.
Lots of good bubbles coming up, tons of carbonation. It's getting a little, what's the word? Condensation on the outside because we're outside. But it's crystal clear, nice bright color, beautiful.
Smells like a beer.
Smells like beer. I smell the hops. Hops forward on this one. And I'm going in.
It's not overly hoppy, though.
On the smell it is. Oh, that's nice. It's got a good mouthfeel to it right off the bat. Doesn't feel thin or watery. Got some maltiness to it. The hops it's a little more hops than we're used to. It's not quite IPA level hops, but it's got a little more than we're
But it
used
feels
to.
like the right amount of hops
Yeah.
for this style of beer.
It's nice and crisp. We did put one in the fridge, so that's what you saw. Yeah, the carbonation level is perfect.
Yeah.
It helps to keep it like nice in the mouth.
Now, if you recall, during us testing this kit, we had a little bit of a a Milton problem.
Snafu.
A hurricane came through.
Yep.
So
It sat longer.
we weren't able to keep up with the schedule that was suggested.
Right.
So even with all those difficulties, we had a lovely beer here.
Yeah, this made a fine product. I had zero issue with it. Like, I would drink this the way it is. And I'm not a light style beer drinker, but I would drink this.
Yeah, this is
And
nice.
I think I'm going to, because I think we have 9 or 10 more bottles of it at least.
Yes.
So,
We are going to have crab cakes tonight. I think this is going to pair lovely with that.
yeah, that might work.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, I give this kit 2 thumbs up, basically. There's very minor things that are, like, some of the instructions are things I might do a little bit differently, but even those are very common to be done, just not the way we do them. So there's nothing wrong with that. But overall, I think the kit is fantastic. I think the quality of the materials, the quality of the parts, everything in it is fantastic.
Yep.
And then the end product, really, really good. It only is like 2 pages of instructions, too, for the whole kit, which I like that. But for someone who's never made a beer before, it might be slightly intimidating, but really it's not that hard.
No,
because they took a lot of the guesswork out.
Yeah, adding the hops into the malt mixture straight up.
Yeah.
So it's just one bag, heat, dump, done.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that came across. That a lot of time you either have all grains where you have to extract all the sugars, or you have an extract where it's already extracted, but in both cases, you still have to add hops during a boil. Well, with this one, the hops are in there and it's an extract. So it's like all in one. Like 4 steps are taken out completely and just put into one step. Super easy way to go. I actually really, really appreciate that for first-time brewers.
Absolutely. I appreciate it as not a first-time brewer. Because
yeah, if you just...
hops are gross. I mean,
yeah,
they're really messy.
Yeah,
and so having that pre-extracted and all set up for you, that was lovely. That was lovely. I'm looking forward to trying more of their kits.
Yeah.
Particularly their mixtures now that I have the set. And I'm really hoping, if they're listening, that they make a dark beer, because that would be perfect.
That would be awesome. But yeah, overall, I mean, even my comment about it might be a little intimidating at first. I think fermentation for anybody who's never done it before is slightly intimidating. So that's kind of where I was going with that. If you've never done it at all and you don't know anything about it, seeing only 2 pages of instructions might seem intimidating. But this is so dead simple.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
It's
it's
only 2 pages,
so easy.
because that's all they needed.
Yeah. So my comment, I just had to clarify what I actually meant by it, because I realized what I said sounded bad.
Anyway, if you're new to the fermentation hobby, or not new and just want to have an easy beer,
oh yeah,
get this kit.
Absolutely. This is the kind of thing you make this while you're waiting for something else to finish, because this is so quick and easy.
Yeah.
It was like three, it should be about 3 to 4 weeks to in the glass. And that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
But anyway, as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.